Have you ever wondered why so many women seem to overlook or even avoid men who truly understand them? Men who have mastered confidence, success, and insight into human dynamics, only to chase after those who offer chaos and uncertainty. In a world where relationships are supposed to be built on mutual respect and genuine connection, something deeper is at play that most people never talk about openly. A hidden truth about control, fear, and self protection that shapes modern dating in ways that are leaving millions of men and women frustrated and alone. Stay with me until the very end of this video because I'm going to reveal exactly why this happens and what it means for men who are finally waking up to reality. And trust me, by the time we finish, you will see the bigger picture in a way that could change how you approach everything in your life. If you want more great angry guy content like this, straight talk that cuts through the noise and gets to the heart of what is really going on in society today, then make sure to like this video right now, share it with your friends who need to hear this, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell and select all so you get every single video the moment we release it, because we are dropping truth bombs consistently and you do not want to miss out. Also, if you are serious about protecting your hard-earned assets and building real wealth in these uncertain times, check out Angry's Crypto Academy, where I teach you step by step how to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency safely and effectively so you can safeguard what you have and grow it intelligently without falling for the common pitfalls that trap so many people. The Academy is linked right in the description of this video, so pause for a second if you need to and go check it out now because knowledge like this is power, especially when the traditional systems are showing more cracks every day. And if you are enjoying these angry guy videos and the no nonsense perspective I bring to these important topics, you can show your support by buying me a Red Bull using the link in the description. It keeps the energy high and helps me keep creating this content for you all. So thank you in advance to anyone who does that. It means a lot. Now, let us dive deep into this topic because what we are seeing in modern society goes far beyond the surface level discussions about masculinity and femininity that everyone keeps repeating without really understanding the layers underneath. It is not just about a man being strong and a woman being nurturing, although those elements play a role, but the reality runs much deeper into human psychology, past experiences, and the fundamental ways people protect themselves in relationships. Today, it almost appears as though many women actively ignore or sidestep men who embody true masculinity combined with a profound understanding of female nature. Men who have built confidence through real achievements, wide experiences, and self awareness that makes them unshakable. These are the kinds of men who know exactly who they are, who have set goals and achieved them, who have navigated relationships with clarity and come out stronger on the other side. You would think these men would be the most sought after, the ones women claim they want when they talk about desiring a strong, confident partner. But in practice, something entirely different happens. Women might feel an initial attraction to these men, that spark of interest that comes from recognizing real strength and insight. But then they pull back, they ignore advances, they pretend disinterest, or they shift their attention elsewhere entirely. Why does this pattern keep emerging over and over again in stories from men across the world? The answer lies in the fact that many women today carry significant emotional baggage, a sense of being lost or without clear direction in life, which makes encountering a truly grounded and perceptive man feel intimidating and even frightening on a deep level. It scares them because a man like that represents stability, accountability, and a mirror that reflects back their own uncertainties without any illusions or games to hide behind. They will rarely admit this outright, of course, because admitting fear or intimidation would require vulnerability. And vulnerability feels risky when someone has been hurt or made poor choices in the past. Instead, they downplay it, act as if the man is no big deal, brush off his qualities with casual indifference, all while engaging in subtle behaviors that keep distance. This is not about being inherently deceptive for no reason, but rather a protective mechanism that women have developed over time. especially in an environment where trust has been eroded by repeated disappointments. And every little action, every mixed signal or game played often stems from this need for self protection, a way to maintain some sense of power and safety in interactions that could otherwise expose their insecurities. Women rely heavily on indirect communication, on testing boundaries and reading between the lines, because direct honesty can feel like handing over control. And control is their primary shield against potential pain. They might manipulate situations not out of malice alone, but because it allows them to gauge intentions without fully committing or revealing too much of themselves too soon. Opening up completely, being fully vulnerable from the start, is something most women avoid because it leaves them exposed. And in a world full of mixed messages and fleeting connections, exposure feels dangerous. That is why games are so common, why responses might be delayed or cryptic, why sudden withdrawals happen over small perceived slights. It is not always just to toy with someone or waste time, though that can happen too. But often it is a defense strategy rooted in fear of rejection, abandonment, or being taken advantage of once again. Think about how quickly things can escalate in a woman's mind if a message goes unanswered for too long, how assumptions build up and lead to blocking or deleting contact entirely. That overreaction shows a level of insecurity that makes genuine, straightforward connection difficult because anything real requires patience and overcoming those fears. And unfortunately, many are not ready or willing to do that work. When a woman encounters a man who sees through these defenses, who understands the reasons behind the games, and does not get pulled into unnecessary drama, it disrupts her usual patterns. She cannot easily manipulate or control the dynamic because he is not reacting emotionally or chasing validation. That lack of control is terrifying for someone who relies on it for emotional safety. A confident man who understands female nature does not fall for the tests, does not overinvest prematurely, and maintains his own frame, which forces her to confront her own issues directly rather than hiding behind layers of indirectness. This is why avoidance happens, why attraction exists, but pursuit does not follow through. It is easier to turn toward men who are less perceptive, who allow the games to continue, who provide thrill without demanding growth or accountability. Those men might offer excitement, rebellion, or temporary validation without the pressure of real depth, and that feels safer in the moment, even if it leads to more pain later. This pattern ties directly into the poor decisions many women make when choosing partners earlier in life, decisions driven by emotion, attraction to danger, or societal pressures to live freely and experience everything without restraint. They might ignore the steady, respectful man who is ready for something meaningful and instead pursue the one who excites but ultimately disappoints, leaving them feeling used or disillusioned. That experience shapes their view of all men, creating bitterness and generalizations that paint everyone with the same brush. Yet, the root cause is often their own choices, choices they resist acknowledging because accountability would mean admitting mistakes and working to change. Most women have had that good guy in their past, someone genuine who offered respect and commitment, but they set him aside for something more thrilling at the time, only to regret it when the thrill fades and leaves emptiness behind. Those regrets build walls, heighten defenses, and make trusting a truly understanding man even harder because he would see the full history and expect better moving forward. We see this emotional fragility play out in extreme ways, like public declarations of frustration toward men as a group, statements born from personal hurts that get projected broadly. Women process experiences intensely because they are wired more emotionally, which can lead to decisions that alter their entire outlook. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. make huge profits, and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Historically, societies recognize this by providing protections, guidance, and structures to help women navigate choices wisely, understanding that unchecked emotions could lead to long term consequences. Fathers once played a key role in vetting partners, ensuring daughters were shielded from poor options that could cause lasting damage. But in today's world, with unlimited freedom encouraged at every turn, party hard, explore everything, rack up experiences without judgment, the results are predictable. Women are told to live fully in their youth, delay settling down, prioritize fun and independence, and while that sounds empowering on the surface, it often leads to accumulated regrets, higher standards, unmet by reality, and a struggle to form stable connections later. Men, on the other hand, are biologically inclined toward attraction that overrides many concerns, ready to commit to a woman who presents herself well, even if her past is complicated. That is why selection has traditionally fallen more on women to choose wisely among options. Women who preserve themselves, who make thoughtful decisions early, tend to be more grounded, intelligent in relationships, and less burdened by damage from bad experiences. Those who chase endless thrills often end up with patterns that do not serve them well in the long run, cycles of excitement followed by disappointment that reinforce fear and avoidance of men who could actually offer stability. As millions of men wake up to these dynamics, they are choosing to step back, to stop serving as endless providers of attention, resources, and emotional labor without reciprocity. Look at the countless videos online where women express confusion and frustration about why men no longer approach, no longer pay for everything, no longer chase relentlessly. They wonder where the good men have gone, yet many of them promoted ideas of complete independence, claiming no need for men, pushing narratives that diminished male roles. Men heard that message loud and clear, internalized it, and responded by walking away, focusing on their own growth, peace, and purpose instead of pursuing women who view them primarily as utilities rather than true partners. This shift is profound because for generations, men were conditioned to believe that providing everything attention, time, money, protection was the essence of love and partnership. But many have now realized it was often one sided servitude, taken for granted or exploited under guises like dates, friendships, or casual connections. After years of being used, disrespected, or discarded when no longer needed, men are done. They see that genuine love was rare, replaced by transactional dynamics where women benefited from male effort while offering little in return. Now, as economic pressures mount, inflation rises, and traditional support systems strain, women who relied on state assistance or male provision as backups find those options diminishing. Men are no longer stepping in as Plan B, no longer willing to rescue or serve without mutual respect. Meanwhile, men who embrace this awareness are thriving, building lives of independence, strength, and fulfillment without tying their worth to female approval. They understand female nature not to manipulate, but to protect themselves, to navigate relationships with eyes wide open, and to choose peace over chaos. Women avoid these men because they cannot control them, cannot pull the usual levers to get what they want without earning it. That avoidance is a sign of their own unresolved issues, fear of real intimacy, and reluctance to grow. But for men, it is liberation, a chance to live authentically. Let us take this conversation even further, because the dynamics we are exploring do not exist in a vacuum. They are the direct result of decades of shifting cultural narratives, economic realities, and the gradual erosion of traditional roles that once provided structure and balance between men and women. When we look back at how society functioned even 50 or 60 years ago, men and women generally understood their complementary strengths and responsibilities in a way that created mutual reliance and respect. Men stepped into the role of provider and protector, not out of blind obligation, but because it aligned with their natural drives and gave them purpose, status, and fulfillment within the family and community. Women, in turn, brought nurturing, emotional depth, and home management that allowed the entire system to thrive. It was never perfect, of course, but there was an underlying agreement that both sides contributed something essential, and neither could fully replace the other. Fast forward to today, and that agreement has been systematically dismantled, replaced by messages that frame independence as the ultimate goal for everyone, especially women, while simultaneously portraying traditional male contributions as outdated or even oppressive. The result is a generation of women who were encouraged to believe they could have it all without needing anyone, particularly men, and a generation of men who eventually realized that their efforts were no longer valued or reciprocated in any meaningful way. This cultural shift did not happen overnight. It built slowly through media, education, policy changes, and endless repetition of certain ideas until they became unquestioned truth for millions. Young women grew up hearing that reliance on a man was weakness, that financial independence was non negotiable, that exploring freely in their 20s was not only acceptable, but practically mandatory for self discovery. Career first, fun first, personal fulfillment first, and everything else could wait indefinitely or be handled through alternative means like government support, friends, or temporary arrangements. The message was clear: men were optional accessories at best and potential liabilities at worst. Meanwhile, men were still raised with the old script running in the background, the one that said, work hard, provide generously, pursue women persistently, and your efforts will be rewarded with love, loyalty, and a family. Many men followed that script diligently, only to discover that the rules had changed without anyone telling them directly. They approached, they paid for dinners, they offered time and attention, and in return, they often received mixed signals, ghosting, or outright rejection once their utility ran out. Over time, that repeated experience creates a powerful lesson. Pouring resources into someone who views you primarily as a resource is a losing proposition. Now we are witnessing the consequences play out in real time across social media, dating apps, and everyday interactions. Women in their late 20s, 30s, and beyond are posting emotional videos expressing genuine confusion and distress about the state of dating. They talk about how exhausting it is to maintain the independent lifestyle they were told to embrace, how rent and groceries have become overwhelming burdens, how inflation eats away at their earnings faster than they can keep up. They lament that men no longer initiate conversations in public, no longer ask them out properly, no longer cover the check without hesitation. The phrase, "Where have all the good men gone?" has become a recurring theme, delivered with tears and frustration straight into the camera. Yet, if you scroll back through their own content from just a few years earlier, you will often find the same women celebrating their independence, declaring that they do not need a man to be happy, bragging about handling everything on their own, sometimes even mocking men who still believe in traditional courtship. The irony is palpable, but it is not mere hypocrisy in every case. It is the natural outcome of believing one set of ideals during the peak of youth and energy, only to confront a very different reality when time, biology, and economics catch up. Men, for their part, did exactly what they were told to do when faced with rejection and devaluation. They adapted. When women collectively signaled that male provision and pursuit were no longer required or even desired, men took that message at face value and redirected their energy elsewhere. Gym memberships surged, side businesses flourished, travel increased, male friendships deepened, and personal development became the priority. The rise of communities focused on self improvement, financial independence, and emotional resilience gave men the tools and support to rebuild their lives without centering women as the ultimate goal. This is not about bitterness or revenge for most. It is about survival and sanity. After enough experiences of giving generously and receiving little in return, the rational choice becomes withdrawal. Why continue investing in a market that consistently undervalues your contribution? Why keep offering leadership when it is framed as control, protection when it is called toxic, or provision when it is dismissed as entitlement? The smartest move is to secure your own foundation first. Build abundance in every area of life, and then decide from a position of strength whether any particular relationship adds genuine value or simply drains resources. This withdrawal has created a feedback loop that accelerates the very problems women now complain about. The more men step back and focus on themselves, the fewer high quality options remain in the dating pool for women who are ready to pair up seriously. The men who continue chasing aggressively often fall into two categories: those who have not yet learned the new reality and are still operating on outdated expectations, or those who have adapted in the opposite direction by mastering manipulation and short term tactics. Neither group tends to offer the stability and commitment that women claim to want long term. Meanwhile, the men who have truly leveled up, who understand dynamics deeply and maintain strong boundaries, are increasingly selective or entirely opt out. They recognize that entering a relationship without clear mutual benefit and respect is a high risk endeavor in the current environment. Marriage rates continue to decline. Cohabitation without commitment rises, but often ends poorly. And birth rates in many Western countries fall to historic lows. These are not random trends. They are the measurable outcomes of millions of individual decisions made by men who have decided that the potential rewards no longer justify the risks. One of the most revealing aspects of this shift is how it exposes the difference between stated preferences and revealed preferences. Women frequently state that they want a kind, respectful, emotionally available partner who communicates well and shares responsibilities equally. Yet, when presented with men who embody those qualities combined with genuine strength and insight, many women hesitate, pull away, or redirect attention towards someone less stable but more exciting. This is not universal, of course. There are always exceptions, women who are self aware, grounded, and ready for real partnership. But the pattern is widespread enough that it cannot be ignored. The reason ties back to control and comfort zones. A man who understands female nature deeply does not provide the emotional roller coaster that some women have become accustomed to. He does not overreact to tests, does not chase endlessly for validation, does not allow drama to dictate the frame. That predictability and steadiness can feel boring or even threatening to someone whose past relationships thrived on intensity, jealousy, or constant reassurance cycles. Excitement often masquerades as chemistry, while true compatibility gets labeled as lacking spark. Furthermore, a perceptive man holds up a mirror that many women are not ready to look into. He sees the patterns, the inconsistencies, the lingering effects of past choices, and he responds accordingly with calm boundaries rather than enabling dysfunction. That level of clarity forces growth, and growth is uncomfortable. It is far easier to engage with someone who remains somewhat oblivious, who can be guided or influenced through emotional levers, who provides validation without demanding accountability. This is why avoidance becomes the default strategy when confronted with a man who cannot be easily controlled or manipulated. It is not always conscious. Much of it operates on an instinctive level, a protective response to the threat of genuine intimacy. Real intimacy requires vulnerability from both sides, and vulnerability feels dangerous when trust has been broken repeatedly or when personal regrets weigh heavily. Consider the role that social media plays in amplifying all of this. Platforms reward attention seeking behavior, emotional outbursts, and performative independence. Women gain validation from likes and comments affirming their strength and beauty, creating an illusion of abundance that delays serious self reflection. Men, observing this from the outside, see the disconnect between online personas and real life needs. They watch women proclaim self sufficiency while simultaneously struggling with basic expenses, declaring high standards while settling for inconsistent situations, demanding respect while offering little in return. The cumulative effect is a loss of trust on both sides. Men become wary of investing emotionally or financially. Women become defensive about their choices and project frustration outward. The cycle reinforces itself until someone breaks it through radical honesty and personal change, which is rare because it requires courage most people avoid. Another layer worth examining is the economic underpinning of these shifts. For decades, expanding government programs and safety nets allowed women to opt out of traditional dependence on individual men by transferring that dependence to the collective through taxes and redistribution. Single motherhood incentives, no fault divorce laws, expanded welfare, and affirmative action in education and employment all contributed to a system where women could make choices with reduced immediate consequences. Men, as the primary taxpayers, effectively subsidized lifestyles that often excluded them personally. But that system relied on endless economic growth, low inflation, and a strong middle class of working men willing to participate fully. As those conditions deteriorate, as debt mounts and real wages stagnate, the cracks become impossible to ignore. Women who planned on state support as a backup now face shrinking benefits and rising costs. Women who assumed high earning men would always be available discover that many of those men have checked out entirely. The fallback options evaporate, leaving a harsh confrontation with reality. Men who understand this broader picture are not waiting around for society to correct course. They are building parallel systems, investing in skills, assets, health, and networks that insulate them from dependence on broken institutions. Cryptocurrency, remote work, minimalism, international options, and strong male alliances all serve as tools for freedom and security. The mindset shifts from seeking approval to creating options. Abundance replaces scarcity thinking. Peace becomes the priority over drama. And from that position of strength, relationships become possible only on terms that honor mutual respect and shared vision. Anything less gets declined without hesitation or regret. This evolution represents a profound rebalancing. For the first time in generations, men hold leverage not through force or obligation, but through simple choice. They choose where to direct their time, money, energy, and commitment. Women who bring genuine value, reciprocity, and emotional maturity find that doors remain open. Those who do not increasingly find themselves on the outside looking in. The anger and frustration we see expressed online often stems from resistance to this new reality, from an unwillingness to adapt to a world where male effort must be earned rather than assumed. But adaptation is inevitable. Either individuals adjust their expectations and behavior, or they continue facing the consequences of outdated assumptions. As we move forward into 2026 and beyond, these trends will only intensify. Technology continues to enable location independence and financial sovereignty for men who seize the opportunities. Cultural narratives may shift again as the pain of current outcomes becomes undeniable. Some women will wake up, take accountability, and rebuild themselves into partners worth choosing. Others will double down on blame and entitlement, further isolating themselves. Men will keep walking the path of self mastery, knowing that true power comes from within, not from external validation or societal scripts. The beauty of this moment is that it offers clarity. No more illusions about what love requires. No more confusion about roles and responsibilities. Everyone has the chance to see reality plainly and decide how to respond. For men, the message is simple: build yourself relentlessly, understand dynamics deeply, maintain boundaries firmly, and live on your own terms. The right connections will follow naturally when both people operate from strength rather than need. Let us keep building on this foundation, because the story we are telling is not just about individual choices in dating or relationships. It is about the complete restructuring of incentives that have governed male and female behavior for centuries, and how those incentives have been flipped almost entirely within a single generation. When incentives change, behavior follows, and right now we are living through one of the largest behavioral shifts in modern history. Men are no longer responding to the old rewards that once pulled them into marriage, family provision, and lifelong commitment. The traditional bargain was straightforward. A man would trade his labor, protection, and resources for a woman's loyalty, companionship, sexual exclusivity, and the raising of his children in a stable home. That bargain held society together for thousands of years across cultures, because both sides received something irreplaceable. Women gained security and status through a reliable provider. Men gained purpose, legacy, and, uh, and a cooperative partner who respected his leadership. But over the past 50 years, layer by layer, that bargain has been eroded to the point where many men now look at it and rationally conclude that the costs far outweigh the benefits. The erosion started with legal changes that removed most of the protections men once had. No fault divorce meant that a man could lose access to his children, half or more of his assets, and face ongoing financial obligations, even if he did nothing wrong. Family courts statistically favor women in custody and support decisions, creating a perceived bias that discourages men from risking marriage altogether. Add to that the cultural messaging that portrays men as disposable, incompetent, or inherently problematic, and the risk reward calculation becomes even clearer. Why sign up for a contract where one party can exit at any time, take the children and future earnings, and still be celebrated as empowered, while the other party is often labeled as the villain by default? Millions of men have watched this happen to fathers, brothers, friends, and coworkers, and they have decided that the potential downside is simply too severe. Opting out is not weakness. It is a rational response to an unbalanced system. At the same time, women were sold a vision of total independence that sounded liberating in theory, but has proven exhausting and unsustainable in practice for the majority. The promise was that education, career success, and personal freedom would deliver fulfillment equal to or greater than family life. Delay marriage, delay children, climb the corporate ladder, travel the world, live for experiences, and everything will work out perfectly. For a small percentage of high achieving women in lucrative fields, that path can work reasonably well, at least for a while. But for the average woman, the reality hits differently. Biological clocks do not negotiate. Energy levels decline with age, fertility windows close, and the dating market becomes increasingly competitive as time passes. The very freedom that was celebrated in youth often transforms into isolation and regret later, especially when combined with economic pressures that make single living increasingly difficult. Rent, healthcare, food, transportation, all costs rise faster than wages for most people, and doing it completely alone removes the natural buffer that a cooperative partnership once provided. This is where the frustration we see expressed online becomes most visible. Women who followed the script exactly as it was written now find themselves in their mid 30s or 40s asking why life feels so much harder than they were told it would be. They expected that by this stage a suitable partner would appear naturally, someone who matches their accomplishments and is eager to build together. Instead, they encounter men who are cautious, independent, and unwilling to commit resources without ironclad assurances of mutual benefit. The high quality men they overlooked or rejected earlier have often moved on, either into selective relationships with younger or more cooperative women, or into contented single lives focused on personal goals. The remaining pool skews toward men who either lack ambition or have learned to prioritize short term enjoyment over long term investment. The result is a growing mismatch between expectations and available options, and the emotional fallout from that mismatch fuels much of the content we see trending on social platforms. Men who understand female nature deeply are especially unlikely to step into this gap as rescuers. They recognize the patterns of entitlement, the lingering effects of past choices, and the probability of future dissatisfaction directed at them. A man who has built his life around self respect and clear boundaries will not ignore red flags just to fill an emotional void for someone else. He knows that entering a relationship from a position of need rather than choice rarely ends well. Instead, he waits for evidence of genuine compatibility, emotional maturity, and reciprocal effort. If those qualities are absent, he continues investing in himself, his health, his finances, his friendships, and his purpose. This is not cold or callous, it is simply prioritizing long term well being over short term pressure to play savior. The days when men felt obligated to provide for women who brought little beyond demands are over for a growing segment of the male population. One of the most powerful realizations driving this change is the understanding that female attraction and partner selection are not always aligned with long term happiness or stability. Women often feel intense attraction toward traits that signal excitement, dominance, or social proof in the moment, traits that do not necessarily translate into reliable partnership later. Confidence can become arrogance, charm can mask manipulation, physical appeal can fade without deeper substance. Many women spend their most fertile and attractive years pursuing men who excel at generating those intense feelings, only to discover later that those same men are least likely to commit or provide consistent support. By the time that lesson sinks in, the landscape has shifted, and the men who were once considered safe or boring suddenly become the most valuable commodities. But those men have frequently adapted by raising their standards dramatically or removing themselves from consideration entirely. This dynamic creates a feedback loop of resentment on both sides. Women feel frustrated that the reliable men they now seek seem unavailable or uninterested, while men feel justified in their caution after years of observing how partner selection actually works. The truth is that both perspectives contain validity, but neither side is fully innocent. Women made choices based on feelings and cultural encouragement. Men enabled poor behavior by continuing to provide attention and resources without requiring accountability. Now the bill has come due, and everyone is adjusting to the new equilibrium. The difference is that men generally have more capacity to adapt independently. A man can build wealth, strength, skills, and social circles on his own terms. He can travel, pursue hobbies, create businesses, and find meaning without needing a partner. Women face greater biological and social pressures that make prolonged independence more challenging, though not impossible for those who plan carefully. Looking ahead into 2026 and the years that follow, several trends suggest this rebalancing will continue accelerating. Remote work and digital economies allow men to relocate to lower cost regions or countries with more favorable dynamics, reducing financial pressure and increasing lifestyle options. Advances in health and longevity research benefit men who invest in fitness and nutrition early, extending their prime years well beyond traditional expectations. Financial tools like cryptocurrency, decentralized assets, and alternative investments give individuals greater control over wealth outside traditional systems that can be influenced by legal proceedings. All of these developments empower men to design lives of abundance and freedom without relying on institutional approval or partnership mandates. On the cultural front, Voices challenging the dominant narratives are growing louder and reaching wider audiences. Content creators, podcasters, authors, and communities dedicated to male self improvement are providing blueprints that millions follow daily. The message is consistent. Focus on what you can control, build undeniable value, maintain emotional discipline, and never negotiate your self respect. As more men implement these principles and visibly thrive, the contrast with struggling alternatives becomes impossible to ignore. Younger men entering adulthood now absorb this perspective from the start, bypassing the decades of conditioning that trapped previous generations. They enter the world already aware of the risks and equipped with strategies to mitigate them. Women who recognize these shifts early have an opportunity to adapt and position themselves for genuine partnership. The ones who succeed tend to share common traits: self awareness about past choices, willingness to offer real reciprocity, appreciation for male effort without taking it for granted, and emotional stability that does not rely on constant external validation. These women often find that high value men remain open to connection when approached with respect and authenticity. The key difference is that the power dynamic has equalized. No longer can demands be made from a position of assumed entitlement. Value must be demonstrated and earned through consistent actions over time. For the majority who resist this new reality, the path becomes increasingly difficult. Blaming men collectively, doubling down on independence rhetoric while privately struggling, or cycling through temporary situations that provide short term relief but no lasting security. These approaches lead to growing isolation. The state cannot indefinitely replace the individual male provision on a large scale, especially as fiscal pressures mount globally. Economic downturns, inflation, and demographic declines all strain public resources that were once counted on as backups. Personal responsibility becomes non negotiable when systemic support erodes. Ultimately, this moment in history offers a rare chance for clarity and renewal. Men are rediscovering purpose through self mastery and brotherhood. Women have the opportunity to rebuild trust through accountability and genuine partnership. Society as a whole can relearn the value of complementary roles without coercion or resentment. But none of that happens automatically. It requires individual courage to face uncomfortable truths, reject outdated scripts, and build from a foundation of mutual respect rather than exploitation or entitlement. The men who understand female nature most deeply are not avoiding women out of hatred or fear. They are protecting their peace, energy, and future while remaining open to connections that enhance rather than diminish their lives. Women who avoid these men do so because control feels safer than vulnerability, familiarity feels safer than growth, and blame feels safer than accountability. Breaking that cycle starts with honesty, first with oneself and then with others. And as we move deeper into this decade, the divide between those who adapt and those who resist will become even more apparent. Thriving will belong to the adaptable, the disciplined, the self aware on both sides. Chaos will claim those who cling to illusions. The choice belongs to each person, renewed every day through actions and priorities. Let us continue unraveling this intricate tapestry because the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that what we are witnessing is not merely a dating crisis or a temporary cultural blip, but a fundamental recalibration of human pairing strategies that have been in place since the dawn of civilization. Throughout history, successful societies have always found ways to channel male energy and female selectivity into structures that benefited families, communities, and future generations. Whether through arranged marriages, dowries, religious guidelines, or social customs, the goal was consistent: align incentives so that men had strong reasons to invest heavily in one woman and their shared offspring, while women had strong reasons to choose partners who could provide long term security and status. These systems were never romantic in the modern Disney sense, but they were effective at creating stability, reducing conflict, and ensuring survival across generations. What makes our current era unique is that virtually all of those aligning mechanisms have been removed or reversed, leaving raw human nature exposed without the guardrails that once kept extremes in check. When guardrails disappear, people revert to short term evolutionary strategies. For women, that often means prioritizing traits associated with immediate genetic fitness and social dominance, even when those traits correlate poorly with long term provisioning or emotional consistency. For men, it means either doubling down on short term pursuit to maximize options or withdrawing entirely when the long term investment appears too risky. Both responses are biologically rational in a vacuum, but they create societal friction when scaled across millions of people. The friction manifests as declining birth rates, rising singlehood, increasing mental health challenges, and a growing sense of disconnection between the sexes. Politicians and media outlets try to frame these outcomes as mysteries or blame external factors like economics or technology, but the core driver is simpler. The traditional incentives that encourage cooperation have been replaced by incentives that reward individualism and caution. Men who have awakened to this reality often describe a profound sense of liberation mixed with initial grief. The liberation comes from no longer defining success through female approval or societal expectations of provision without reciprocity. The grief comes from mourning the loss of an idealized vision many were raised to believe in, the vision of finding a loyal partner, building a family, and leaving a legacy within a supportive framework. Once that vision proves unattainable or too dangerous under current conditions, men redirect their considerable drive toward alternative sources of meaning. Entrepreneurship surges, physical transformation becomes commonplace, skill acquisition accelerates, and male only spaces flourish as places of genuine camaraderie rather than competition for female attention. These shifts are not petty or immature, they are mature adaptations to a changed environment. A man who builds multiple streams of income, cultivates deep friendships, maintains peak health, and travels freely has created a life of abundance that no single relationship can easily disrupt. This abundance mindset fundamentally alters how these men approach potential partnerships. Where once they might have rushed in with generous offers of time, money, and commitment, they now observe carefully and move slowly. They watch for consistency between words and actions, for genuine respect rather than performative appreciation, for emotional regulation rather than reactivity. Red flags that previous generations overlooked or rationalized now trigger immediate disengagement. Mixed signals, social media validation seeking, history of poor partner selection, entitlement to male resources without contribution all become clear disqualifiers. This selectivity is not arrogance, it is self preservation learned through observation and often personal pain. The man who understands female nature knows that attraction can be manufactured quickly, but respect and trust take time to earn. He refuses to confuse the former with the latter. Women encountering this new breed of man often experience cognitive dissonance. On one hand, his confidence, success, and emotional centeredness generate natural attraction. On the other hand, his refusal to chase, to tolerate games, or to provide unearned benefits creates discomfort and uncertainty. That discomfort triggers defensive responses, accusations of intimidation, claims of emotional unavailability, or redirection toward men who offer easier validation. The perceptive man remains unfazed because he recognizes these responses as projections rather than accurate critiques. He knows that true availability requires mutual investment, not unilateral pursuit. He knows that emotional depth emerges through shared challenge and growth, not through endless reassurance of fleeting feelings. Most importantly, he knows his worth is intrinsic, not contingent on rescuing someone from consequences of their own making. This dynamic explains why so many modern women express simultaneous desire for a strong, confident partner and simultaneous avoidance when presented with one who also maintains firm boundaries. The strong man who chases relentlessly and overlooks flaws provides a familiar script, one that allows continued control through emotional leverage. The strong man who leads calmly, expects reciprocity, and walks away from disrespect represents an unknown path requiring personal change. Change is hard, especially when surrounded by cultural messages that frame female choices as always valid and male standards as problematic. Accountability feels like judgment when one has been told for years that judgment is oppression. Growth feels threatening when stagnation has been normalized under the banner of self acceptance. Consider how this plays out in everyday dating scenarios. A woman meets a man who is physically fit, financially stable, socially competent, and genuinely interested. Initial interactions go well, attraction builds. Then she begins subtle testing, delayed responses, ambiguous plans, social media posts designed to provoke jealousy. The unaware man doubles his efforts, sends multiple messages, offers expensive dates, seeks reassurance. This response confirms her power and extends the validation cycle. The aware man, however, responds differently. He matches energy, maintains his schedule, refuses to engage drama. Suddenly, the dynamic shifts. Her usual tools yield diminished returns. Anxiety rises. Rather than adapt by communicating directly and investing genuinely, many women withdraw or create conflict to regain familiar footing. The relationship ends not because of incompatibility, but because one party refused to participate in dysfunction. Multiply this scenario across millions of interactions, and the aggregate effect becomes the current landscape. High value men, increasingly single or highly selective. Average women, frustrated by lack of commitment from desirable partners. Average men, either emulating the high value approach or dropping out entirely. The middle ground where mutual compromise once occurred has shrunk dramatically. Compromise requires both parties to believe the other brings irreplaceable value. When women believe male effort is either obligatory or replaceable by state and social support, and when men believe female loyalty is either conditional or unattainable, compromise collapses. Looking specifically at 2026, early indicators suggest these trends are not slowing. Housing costs remain elevated in most Western countries, making single living financially straining for median earners. Fertility clinics report continued growth as women delay or extend attempts into later ages. Mental health platforms show rising usage among both sexes, but with different primary concerns. Women often citing loneliness and dating frustration, men citing purpose and societal devaluation. Corporate diversity initiatives continue emphasizing female advancement, while male dominated fields like construction, mining, and trades face ongoing shortages. Educational gender gaps widen further, with women now earning roughly 60% of college degrees in many nations. All of these factors reinforce the underlying imbalance. Yet, within this challenging environment, pockets of hope emerge. Communities of women are beginning to speak openly about the downsides of prolonged independence, the exhaustion of constant career pressure, the quiet regret over missed family opportunities. Some are actively working to rebuild feminine strengths, nurturing emotional intelligence, home building, genuine support for male leadership when earned. These women often find that high value men remain receptive when approached with humility and clear intent. Similarly, Men who have mastered self improvement without descending into bitterness create spaces where healthy dynamics can flourish. They lead by example, demonstrating that strength includes compassion, boundaries include generosity when appropriate, and independence includes openness to worthy partnership. The path forward requires both sides to reject the false dichotomies that have dominated discourse. Masculinity is not toxic, nor is femininity weakness. Independence does not require isolation, nor does partnership require servitude. Freedom includes responsibility, strength includes vulnerability when safe, leadership includes listening. The couples who navigate this successfully tend to share core principles: radical personal accountability, commitment to continuous growth, deep respect for biological differences without rigid stereotypes, and unwavering priority on mutual fulfillment over individual maximization. For men reading or listening to this in 2026, the message remains consistent. Continue building. Build your body through disciplined training and nutrition. Build your finances through intelligent saving, investing, and skill development. Build your mind through reading, reflection, and diverse experiences. Build your network through authentic connections with other growth oriented men. Build your spirit through practices that ground you in purpose beyond fleeting pleasure or approval. From that foundation of unshakable strength, any relationship becomes an enhancement rather than a necessity. You choose partners because they add beauty and depth to an already rich life, not because they fill voids you refuse to address yourself. For women willing to hear this message, the opportunity is equally powerful. Examine past choices honestly, not to wallow in shame, but to extract wisdom. Develop standards that prioritize character and compatibility alongside attraction. Cultivate skills that bring genuine value to partnership: emotional regulation, communication, appreciation, support. Release entitlement to male resources without contribution. Embrace femininity as strength rather than submission. Seek men who challenge you to grow while protecting your peace. The men worth having will recognize and reciprocate authentic effort. Society will eventually find a new equilibrium, as it always does when imbalances become too painful to sustain. Birth rates may force policy changes, economic realities may shift cultural priorities, technological advances may alter pairing dynamics entirely. But waiting for external correction wastes precious time. Individual action creates the future faster than collective deliberation. Every man who chooses self mastery over servitude, every woman who chooses accountability over entitlement, contributes to the rebalancing. This moment in January 2026 stands as both warning and invitation. Warning against continuing down paths that lead to isolation and regret. Invitation toward lives of deeper meaning through honest connection when ready, or peaceful independence when not. The choice renews daily through small decisions: how we spend time, where we direct energy, whom we allow influence, what we accept as normal. Men walking away are not abandoning society. They are redefining participation on terms that preserve dignity and purpose. Women avoiding men who truly see them are protecting fragile constructs built on avoidance rather than truth. Both strategies offer temporary comfort but long term cost. The alternative requires courage: men offering leadership with compassion, women offering respect with vulnerability, both offering commitment with clarity. The future belongs to those who build rather than blame, who grow rather than grasp, who choose reality over illusion. That future begins with awareness, continues through action, and endures through consistency. Let us push this exploration even deeper into the mechanics of human behavior, because understanding why women often avoid men who truly comprehend female nature requires us to examine not just surface level attraction, but the intricate interplay between evolutionary wiring, modern cultural conditioning, and individual life experiences that shape decision making in profound ways. At the core of this avoidance lies a fundamental conflict between what feels safe in the short term and what actually leads to long term fulfillment. Women, like all humans, are driven by dual layers of motivation: the ancient instincts that prioritize immediate security, status, and genetic signals, and the higher order desires for stability, respect, and emotional depth that emerge when basic needs are met. In environments of abundance and reduced consequences, the ancient instincts often dominate early adulthood, leading to partner choices that maximize excitement and validation. Only later, when time compresses options and reality intrudes, do the higher order desires rise to the forefront. By then, however, the landscape has changed, and the men best equipped to fulfill those deeper needs have frequently adapted by raising barriers or withdrawing entirely. This temporal mismatch creates a tragedy of timing that plays out repeatedly across Western societies in 2026. A woman in her early 20s, surrounded by encouragement to live freely, explore widely, and prioritize self discovery, naturally gravitates toward men who trigger strong emotional responses. The charismatic musician, the confident athlete, the rebellious entrepreneur, the socially dominant figure who commands attention in any room. These men often excel at generating intense chemistry because their traits signal high genetic quality, resource potential, or social proof, all of which were critical indicators in ancestral environments. The emotional highs feel like love, the drama feels like passion, the uncertainty feels like adventure. Cultural messaging reinforces this path by celebrating female sexual agency, framing restraint as repression, and portraying traditional commitment as limiting. Few voices warn about the long term compatibility of these choices, and those that do are often dismissed as outdated or controlling. Meanwhile, the steady, respectful man who demonstrates consistent character, financial discipline, and emotional maturity gets categorized as safe but unexciting. He offers stability without the dopamine spikes, reliability without the push pull tension that mimics obsessive love. In a youth centered phase where future consequences feel abstract, stability reads as boredom. He becomes the friend, the orbiter, the backup option, while energy flows toward the more thrilling pursuit. This pattern is not universal, but it is common enough to shape aggregate outcomes. Years pass, experiences accumulate, heartbreaks mount, standards rise in proportion to perceived value, while actual options contract due to age, accumulated baggage, and shifting male behavior. By the mid 30s, many women reassess priorities. Career plateaus appear. Biological urgency increases, loneliness deepens during quiet evenings, and the once celebrated independence begins to feel like isolation. The desire shifts toward partnership, family, emotional security, shared purpose. Now, the traits that were once dismissed as boring become highly desirable: consistency, provision, protection, leadership. The problem is that the men who naturally embody these traits, in combination with genuine confidence and insight, have undergone their own transformation. They have observed the patterns up close, often through personal rejection or watching friends navigate costly divorces and false accusations. They have internalized the risks of investing heavily in a system that offers few protections and frequent devaluation. Most importantly, they have built lives of such abundance and self sufficiency that female companionship is no longer a need but a preference. And this is where the avoidance dynamic becomes most pronounced. When a woman encounters a man who sees through superficial games, who maintains frame without arrogance, who offers leadership without control, who demonstrates abundance without flaunting, her instinctive response often mixes attraction with apprehension. Attraction arises from recognizing authentic strength. Apprehension arises from realizing that this strength cannot be easily manipulated or leveraged for unearned benefits. Past strategies of emotional escalation, withdrawal, jealousy induction, or guilt provocation fall flat against a man who responds with calm detachment rather than reactive pursuit. The usual pathways to control evaporate. In their place stands a requirement for genuine vulnerability, consistent effort, and mutual respect. Requirements that demand confronting personal shortcomings and making changes. Change is uncomfortable. It threatens the ego defenses built over years of rationalizing past decisions. It requires admitting that some choices led to undesirable outcomes, that certain beliefs about independence were incomplete, that male effort has real value when offered freely rather than extracted. For women carrying unresolved pain from previous relationships, opening to a man who truly sees them feels exponentially riskier than engaging with someone more predictable in their dysfunction. The dysfunctional partner, however flawed, operates within known parameters. The healthy partner demands evolution into unknown territory. Evolution feels like loss of self when the current self was constructed around avoidance of pain. Men who understand this deeply do not take the avoidance personally. They recognize it as a symptom of internal conflict rather than a reflection of their worth. They continue building, knowing that any woman worth partnering with long term must arrive at readiness through her own journey, not through rescue or persuasion. Pressure creates resistance, space allows reflection. The man who chases convinces himself he can fix or earn love through effort. The man who leads creates opportunity for the woman to choose growth voluntarily. When she chooses avoidance instead, he accepts it without resentment, redirecting energy toward his mission, health, wealth, and brotherhood. This acceptance marks a pivotal maturation point for modern men. Previous generations often internalized rejection as personal failure, driving them to double efforts or descend into despair. Today's awakened men reframe rejection as filtering. A woman avoiding genuine depth reveals her current unreadiness, sparing both parties from mismatched investment. Time becomes the ultimate revealer. The woman who truly desires healthy partnership will do the work necessary to become capable of it. The woman who prefers familiar chaos will continue seeking it elsewhere. Either way, the perceptive man remains centered, unaffected by outcomes beyond his control. Looking across the broader cultural landscape in early 2026, we see mounting evidence that this rebalancing is accelerating rather than plateauing. Economic reports highlight persistent inflation in essentials like housing, food, and childcare, squeezing single earners regardless of gender. Demographic Studies Project continued decline in marriage and birth rates across most developed nations, with no immediate reversal in sight. Mental health providers report increasing demand from women in their 30s and 40s, citing regret, loneliness, and anxiety over future prospects. Men's health platforms and communities, conversely, show surging engagement focused on purpose, discipline, and legacy outside traditional family structures. Investment in personal development, from fitness programs to financial education to skill building retreats, skews heavily male and continues growing year over year. Technology amplifies these divergent paths. Dating apps evolve algorithms that favor short term matching while struggling to facilitate long term compatibility, reinforcing cyclical disappointment. Social media algorithms reward emotional content and performative independence, creating echo chambers that delay self reflection. Meanwhile, alternative platforms and private communities flourish for men seeking unfiltered discussion of strategy, philosophy, and mutual support. Cryptocurrency and decentralized finance provide tools for financial sovereignty that reduce dependence on traditional systems vulnerable to legal or institutional interference. Remote work opportunities expand geographic freedom, allowing men to optimize lifestyle costs and quality without anchoring to high expense urban centers favored by corporate career tracks. All of these factors compound the leverage shift. Men increasingly hold options across finance, location, social networks, health, and personal fulfillment. Women facing biological timelines and rising living costs find their options contracting unless they adapt expectations and behavior accordingly. The pressure cooker intensifies. Some women respond by doubling down on career ambition and social validation, delaying family further in hopes conditions improve. Others pivot toward traditional values, seeking communities that prioritize partnership and family early. A growing middle segment expresses confusion and frustration publicly, wondering why reality diverges so sharply from promised outcomes. The perceptive man watches these developments with detached clarity. He invests in assets and skills that appreciate over time, compound interest in markets, compound growth in physical capacity, compound wisdom through experience and study. He cultivates relationships with other high value men who reinforce accountability and ambition rather than complacency. He travels to experience different cultures and dynamics, broadening perspective beyond Western constraints. He dates selectively when opportunities arise, but never at the expense of his primary mission, becoming the strongest version of himself across all domains. When interaction with women occurs, he leads with quiet confidence. Conversation flows naturally toward depth rather than superficiality. Boundaries communicate respectfully but firmly. Generosity emerges authentically rather than transactionally. Attraction builds through demonstrated competence rather than performative charm. Women responding positively reveal readiness through actions, consistent communication, genuine curiosity, reciprocal effort, appreciation without entitlement. Women responding with avoidance or testing reveal unreadiness, triggering polite disengagement rather than pursuit. Both outcomes serve the greater goal of alignment. This approach yields peace that previous generations rarely accessed. No longer tethered to female approval for validation, men discover intrinsic motivation that sustains through challenges. Purpose derives from mastery, contribution, and legacy beyond biological reproduction if chosen. Health optimizes through disciplined routines, free from stress of dysfunctional dynamics. Wealth accumulates through focused effort, unburdened by financial extraction. Brotherhood provides emotional depth and loyalty that romantic relationships often fail to match in modern contexts. Women observing this piece from afar experience mixed emotions. Envy arises from witnessing lives of calm strength amid societal chaos. Attraction grows from recognizing authentic abundance. Fear emerges from confronting the gap between current reality and required growth. The path to bridging that gap begins with honesty, acknowledging past choices without self flagellation, identifying patterns that no longer serve, committing to incremental change across mindset and behavior. Supportive communities of like minded women accelerate this process when found, providing accountability and encouragement absent in mainstream spaces. Success stories emerge quietly but steadily. Women who embrace accountability, rebuild feminine strengths, and approach high value men with respect and reciprocity often find receptivity beyond expectation. These pairings tend toward rapid progression, clear communication, shared values, alignment, mutual investment, long term commitment. Both partners recognize the rarity of alignment in current conditions, fostering gratitude rather than complacency. Children raised in such environments benefit from modeled respect, emotional regulation, and complementary roles, breaking cycles of dysfunction. The majority trajectory, however, continues toward increased polarization. Men deepen self mastery and selective engagement. Women delay confrontation with reality until consequences become unavoidable. Society absorbs the costs through reduced productivity, strained public resources, and cultural stagnation. Policy attempts to address symptoms, increase subsidies, fertility incentives, immigration adjustments rarely touch root causes tied to individual incentives and cultural narratives. Individual agency remains the most potent force for change. Every man choosing discipline over distraction, boundaries over supplication, growth over stagnation contributes to the shift. Every woman choosing accountability over blame, reciprocity over entitlement, femininity over performative strength adds counterweight. Aggregate individual decisions reshape reality faster than top down intervention. As January 2026 progresses, the contrast sharpens daily. Gyms fill with men building bodies and minds. Investment accounts grow through consistent contribution. Passports collect stamps from new horizons. Private communities expand with members committed to excellence. Meanwhile, viral content captures mounting frustration from those resisting adaptation. The divide widens between creators and consumers, builders and blamers, adapters and resistors. The men who understand female nature most deeply embody this adaptation fully. They avoid entanglement not from fear, but from wisdom. They offer leadership not from obligation, but from strength. They build empires of personal sovereignty that relationships may join, but never define. Women avoid them temporarily, out of self protection, permanently, out of unreadiness. Both choices reflect current fitness for partnership. Time reveals all. Peace belongs to those who align actions with reality rather than narrative. Fulfillment belongs to those who build rather than wait. Legacy belongs to those who contribute beyond self. The path clarifies with each conscious step. What did you think about what we discussed today? Do you agree with these observations or do you see it differently? Leave a comment below. Sharing your thoughts, your experiences, anything that comes to mind, because I read them all and it helps build this conversation. Like the video if you like it, do not forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.